What do writers think about AI? Well, it depends on what kind of writer we're talking about. I'm Mignon Fogarty, and this is AI Side Quest, and I'm here today with Josh Bernoff, who is a writing coach, editor, and ghostwriter who helps people write business books. He's been in the business for years, and he helped Gotham ghostwriters with a new survey they've done of an awful lot of writers. So, Josh, welcome to AI Side Quest.
Hi, it's great to be here.
Yeah, so this was a fascinating study. Maybe give us some background. What was the thinking behind doing it in the first place?
So, our sponsors at Gotham Ghostwriters and we realized that there was an enormous amount of conversation happening out there about writers and AI, and absolutely no data. so, so in the absence of data, people are like, no, it's like this. So I'm like, okay, I am a serious researcher. Let's actually do a survey and find out what people think. And we wanted to reach all kinds of writers, marketing writers, ghost writers, book authors, fiction writers, really all sorts of writers, and find out what they were actually doing out there. Now, we had what I would consider to be unexpected level of success. There was so much interest in this that we managed to gather 1,491 responses. And as a researcher, I can tell you that's not only great for making accurate estimates of what's going on, but you can look at subgroups and find out what their opinions are. And that's exactly what we did.
Yeah, that's pretty good. So, what did you find when you looked at the subgroups?
Well, the main conclusion here was that uh, there's a schism really among writers. 61% of the writers in our survey used AI at least sometimes for some purposes. But what we found was that the people who used AI were very enthusiastic about it, found all sorts of incredible uses for it, said that they were more productive. Meanwhile, the writers that didn't use AI were angry about it. They had all sorts of negative things to say. And, one guy called it sociopathic plagiarism machine. And that sounds like an extreme perspective, but there was lots of backlash of that kind. So I thought, all right, well, this is interesting that we have these two groups that have such a completely different perception of what AI is going to do to the writing
Yeah,
business.
it's really bifurcated, and writers are so good at putting their thoughts into words, vivid words.
In the survey business, we call these verbatims. And yes, these were the richest, most interesting, most literate set of verbatims that I've ever read in a survey.
Yeah, no, you used to
Uh,
be really high up at Forrester, so you know what you're doing
yeah.
here.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so what were the biggest uses?
Um, it was interesting to me when we looked at who was using AI and what they were using it for. Some things were exactly what you'd expect. There was a lot of using it for research as a replacement for search. There was a lot of people who were using it to find words that was what was the right word to use, sort of like a thesaurus. And I happen to think that it's much better as a thesaurus than any thesaurus I've ever used. Um, but one of the things that I found interesting is that there were so many people who were using it as an ideation partner, as a brainstorming mechanism.
Hmm.
So these people were having conversations with the AI to get themselves in a position where they could come up with better ideas or test ideas or find flaws in ideas that they had. Now, at the other end of the spectrum, we were very clear. We asked about who used AI to produce text, which they then published without any further editing, because everyone's all worried that AI is going to actually be writing all of this.
Yeah, it's a very
And
different thing, yeah.
yes, yes, and only 7% of the writers said that they ever did that, and only 1% of the writers said that they did that on a daily basis. So I think uh, that this idea that people are going to use this to replace writing, no, they're going to use it to help with writing much more so than actually replacing the writing work.
Yeah, that's a huge distinction because I feel like when a lot of people who aren't writers hear writers are using AI, they assume that they're using it to write things, but that
Yeah.
just it doesn't seem to be the case, at least not widely.
Yeah. Yeah. One of the interesting results here was we asked about people's opinions about AI. And for example, we asked, do you feel that writing created by AI should have a warning label?
Hmm.
We also asked, do you feel that writing created with the aid of AI should have a warning label? And there was a pretty good agreement among both the AI users and non-users that if you created writing with AI, that you should have a note about that. But there was an extreme difference of opinion about writing created with the aid of AI. The people who use AI felt that no, actually, that probably for the most part doesn't need to be labeled. Whereas the people who don't use it said, "Oh no, you have to label it." And I think this is when if you look a year or two or three into the future, I think almost everything that people write, there'll be some sort of AI that they used for research or, as a thesaurus or to summarize things that they then, that to help them with the material that they're creating, to find errors. And the idea that you would have to disclose that, it's sort of like saying, oh yeah, I used a spell checker.
Yeah, I was really surprised by some of the things on your list that were categorized as using AI. Actually, you had Grammarly on there and Otter, which I believe is a
Mhm.
transcription tool, and those have been around for quite a while. I was surprised. I was actually surprised that anyone would consider using those using AI, but I mean they are now. And
Yeah.
Grammarly's been acquired by an AI company, and I'm not sure. Like, I think they might be doing more today. I'm not fully aware of,
Hmm.
but
Well, these tools actually say that they're using AI, and if you look at suggestions from tools like Grammarly, some of them are AI type suggestions. But yeah, I mean, it's like you have to disclose if you use AI. Well, suppose I use it to transcribe an interview.
mhm.
You really want me to have to tell you that we did the transcription of the interview with AI? Is that really going to affect whether you trust what you're reading or not?
Yeah, yeah, I know it's really fascinating.
Yeah.
And what were some of the biggest fears that people reported?
So I'm going to just put this up in front of me so I
Yeah.
can give you an accurate answer here. Uh, we asked what people were most concerned about. Interestingly, the the concern about hallucinations, that is, false information generated by AI, was very universally shared. 80% of the most advanced AI users were worried about it, and 97% of the non-users were worried about it. So that was practically unanimous. Um, but it's interesting if you look at the question, for example, are corporate leaders who feel that they can substitute AI for writing talent and lay people off? Are you worried about that? The non-users are much more worried about that, with 89% versus 62% of the advanced users that are worried about that. I also found it interesting that we asked, are you worried about AI is contributing to the trend of text that is more bland and boring? And there was actually a lot of concern about that, both among the advanced users, the casual users, and the non-users, that that was going to be an issue.
Mhm.
Anyone who's read text and said, "Oh, this sounds like AI because it's terrible," knows that's a pretty serious problem.
Yeah. Well, one of the other interesting things you found was the way it broke down by income level.
Yeah, that's interesting. I want to actually address that because there's a headline there that's a little shocking, but it's potentially misleading.
Ah,
So we classified people into four levels: as advanced AI users, basic AI users, dabblers who only use it occasionally, and then non-users. And when you compare the advanced users to the non-users, their average salary, average income is $47,000 a year higher than the non-users.
yeah.
Now, it would be really easy to say, "Oh, see, if you use AI, you're going to make more money." But it's pretty clear to me that one important element of that effect is that people who are the most highly paid writers, their time is extremely valuable. And so they want to be as efficient as possible. And they are more likely to embrace these advanced tools as a way to become more efficient. So if you are, let's say you're getting paid $100,000 to ghostwrite a book, which is not unusual for a top tier of writers. Um, you don't want to waste your time on things that are on things like transcribing, on uh, making sure you haven't duplicated a story in three different places. These are things that you're like, okay, let me get the AI to help me with this. And I actually have a ghostwriting client right now. He's an expert on startup companies, and he has said to me at various times, "Don't waste your time on that. Get AI to do it." So he's actually telling me he would prefer my energy to be spent on what I'm good at, not on rote tasks that a machine can do.
Yeah, that makes sense. There's more incentive. And
Hmm.
it makes me think of another result, which was that people who were the highest AI users said they had seen an increase in their demand for their work, whereas people who were less frequent AI users had saw more of a decline in demand for their work,
Yeah.
and that seemed a little odd to me. Do you have thoughts behind those numbers?
Yes. So there's a little subtlety to that. You have to be careful with that particular set of statistics. So, uh, if we ask people, how has AI changed demand for your work as a writing professional? 45% of the people across all of the writing professionals said that it had reduced the demand for their work, and only 6% said it had increased demand. But 49% said that there was no change. So there's certainly a tilt there toward reduced demand. And if you look at the advanced AI users, still 35% of them said that it had reduced demand, and only 21% said it had increased demand. So the people most likely to report increased demand, and for that matter, increased income among the freelancers in our survey, were the advanced AI users. But even in that group, still was more likely to be reporting reduced demand.
Hmm.
Um, I mean, another result here, which was sort of universal across the all the different groups that we looked at, and I mean all different kinds of writers, different uses of AI, everything, was that when we asked people about whether they felt that the writing profession, um, that conditions were going to improve or get worse, three-quarters of them said that they expected it to get worse, and uh, that preponderance of people who expect it to get worse extended across almost every group that we looked at.
Yeah, some of those verbatims that you mentioned were pretty gloomy.
Uh, yes, well,
You wanna read
um,
some?
actually, sure. If you think people will be interested, remember these are writers that we're interviewing, so they're literate, um, and I love these answers. Like um, here, uh, bad for humanity on basically every level. That was a thought leadership writer that uses AI weekly. Um, uh, by the way, am I allowed to use foul language on this?
Yeah, it's a podcast, yeah.
Okay. Okay. Uh, Copy editor says they are bullshit machines. The few times I've tested them, they have proven to be unreliable, incomplete, and facile. Um, and let's just
There was
see.
a guy
There's,
talking about Hollywood and how bad it was.
oh my gosh, yes, yes.
I don't
Right.
know why I
That
assumed it was a guy because 'cause they're anonymous, but
Well, now I could look up whether it was male or female, but this person who's a copy editor said, absolute destruction. I work in Hollywood and in publishing. And the number of lives and careers that have already been destroyed by the pivot to AI is disturbing. And that is by far not the most extreme item here. How about is doom loop of computers writing regurgitated soulless garbage only to be read/summarized by other computers while humanity gets dumber and dumber and loses its ability to read, write, think, and care? Overly pessimistic?
yeah, no, people like there's a lot of hate, and I think that it really, really became apparent when you moved to talking about the fiction writers. Like the bifurcation among fiction writers is much more extreme than among the nonfiction writers, but also the fiction writers who hate it, like really, really hate it. And I see this online a lot.
Yeah, no, it's interesting. One of the things you learn when you conduct surveys is that there are there are uh, variation of opinion about everything. There's nothing's ever 100%, but that's not true of fiction writers talking about AI, because we ask questions like AI generated text can include hallucinations. 98% of the fiction authors that don't use AI agreed with that. Uh, AI generated text trained without permission on copyrighted content that belongs to others. Are you concerned about that? 100% of the fiction authors that don't use AI are concerned about
Yeah.
that. And It's unfair that AI tools are trained on my work without my permission. 100% of the fiction authors that don't use AI are worried about
You almost
that. So,
never get
yeah,
100% response on anything.
no, you never do. So, um, what I can tell you is that in approaching this study, we tried to be as balanced as possible. I am not an AI backer. I am not an AI opponent. I wanted to actually get at the actual data.
Yeah.
And I'm comfortable in the fact now that as a result of all this data that we collected, I am soon going to become pilloried by people on both sides
Yeah.
who all think that I'm an evil tool of the devil because I actually found out how people thought.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, there were fiction writer but were if I remember right, didn't more fiction writers use it daily percentage-wise than nonfiction writers too?
Let me see what we found here. Um, yeah, we had 23% of fiction writers saying that they used it
And that
daily,
was more
and
than nonfiction, if I remember
uh,
right.
yes, but 49% said that they never used it, which was also more. So there is this.
It's much more
What I'm seeing
extreme.
is that there's this extreme people who are using it a lot in fiction, and then there's another extreme people who are not using it and think it's a horrible development that has to be stopped.
Yeah, yeah, it was much more extreme,
Yeah.
on both sides. Well, what else stood out to you?
Uh, so uh, I think one of the most notable things when we dug into this, as far as we could, was that the more people use this, the more positive their attitudes are. So
Was that
I
surprising, though?
actually, well, uh, I don't know if it's surprising, but it was a dramatic effect.
Okay.
If you plot how frequently people use AI tools and the variety of different tools that they use, versus a collection of their opinions, you find that the more that they use it, the more positive they are. Now, interestingly, even the people who use it the most still have a lot of concerns. So it's not like people use it a lot and then they're like, "Oh, this is great, everything's going to be fine." Um, but it is really the case that there's a bunch of non-users who are opposed and a bunch of very sophisticated users who are saying, well, wait a minute, we have some gains to be had here. And this very debate is happening within all media companies, whether we're talking about a magazine or newspaper, or we're talking about a publishing organization, because on the one hand, they're under enormous profit pressure to be more efficient, and AI looks like a useful tool to do that. On the other hand, they are producing the content that these AI tools are swallowing up, and for the most part are not getting compensated, and that's not really fair. So the whole industry is going to have to come to a sort of reckoning about, is there some reasonable way to compensate the creators of content, so that these tools can be used in an efficient way, but that the people who created the content to train them can get some sort of compensation for it.
Yeah. And what else do you think your results mean for the industry?
Um, One of the things that's interesting is that if you go into a company of any kind, whether it's a company that has technical writers or is a company that does almost anything, um, there's this idea that we'll lay a bunch of people off and the other people will be more efficient with AI. And the the people I know who are within companies, and this is more anecdotal, it wasn't in the survey, but the people I know that are within companies are like, no, this is a disaster. They, they're expecting us to do this. We didn't get any training. We don't know what, and so that's not really a very effective strategy. Would be a whole lot more effective to take people who are adept at this, and as our survey showed, there's probably 15% of the writers who are extremely adept at this, and say, all right, your part of your job now is to help other people to understand the effective ways to use this and not just like say, okay, here's Google Gemini, use it to write your memos. Um, it's not just a question of efficiency either. I think that if you give people these tools and you don't give them any sort of training about the best ways to use them, they produce crap, and that's not really good for anybody.
Yeah, I think there's a big debate in industry now too. At least I hope there is. I see it sometimes that there are companies who are like, we can use this technology and get rid of a whole bunch of people and save money. And then
Mm,
there are
yeah.
companies that are saying we can get rid of the busy work and our people can do higher value work and we can actually grow and do even more that we've always wanted to do.
Mm.
And so I'm hopeful. Like I think that we should be pushing for that second scenario that, there are different ways to think about it, and I'm hopeful that it'll come that way. Now, but people in your study how did say that a surprising number of people knew someone who had lost a job because of AI.
Well, actually, so we separated out the freelancers and only looked at the people with corporate jobs and said,
Hmm.
has your company laid people off uh, due to efficiencies from AI? And only 10% of the writers in the survey actually said that their company had done that.
Oh,
So that's a pretty small number. Now, I think the survey was conducted in August and the beginning of September. It's possible that if we asked right now, I'm having this conversation with you at the end of October, that we would get a different result.
yeah.
On the other hand, when you ask people, do you know somebody who lost their job as a result of AI? Yes, there's a pretty large group of people who at least know somebody who's lost their job as a result of AI,
Yeah.
or at least they believe that they have.
Yeah, some people also think companies are using it as an excuse because it sounds like a good reason to lay people off rather than like, "We're just
Yeah.
struggling."
Well, um, it's this is an interesting time. I'm not a macroeconomist, but we are certainly looking at a complete restructuring of the way work gets done as a result of these tools. Um, and normally you'd want to measure that, but gee, the federal government shut down, and the parts of the federal government that measure these things aren't actually doing anything now.
Yeah.
So we are flying blind into a complete restructuring. Now, I was an analyst at Forrester Research when this really interesting thing called the web
Yeah.
appeared, right? And we were like, this is going to have a big impact. And you looked at things like e-commerce and social media and streaming, and yes, it had an enormous impact, but that took 20 years for that evolution to really work its way through the entire industry. We're in a situation now where it's like, okay, we're going to be 18 months into this AI revolution and expect it to change everything. And companies and the way they do things just do not change that quickly. So it really is very hard to understand what might happen here. And the tools themselves are changing at such a rapid pace. I mean, when anyone who says, "Oh, this is how you can detect AI generated text," I'm like, maybe this week, 2 weeks from now, whatever you came, M dashes, really? That's you think they can't train them not to make M dashes,
Yeah.
So it's this very silly idea that there's this tail that will always be visible.
Absolutely, yeah, no, M dashes, that's ridiculous. But I hear it all the time, but it's ridiculous, and you're right, it's changing so fast, like, I try to keep up
Yeah.
and I think I keep up better than most people, and I still feel like I'm know a tenth of what I'd like to know about
Yeah.
it.
The in preparation for this study, I interviewed some of the most sophisticated writers that I know that were using AI. And the thing that was interesting to me was that I heard lots of creative activity. I mean, there's a writer who writes for the Wall Street Journal who told me that when she's considering an article, she loads a bunch of stuff up into AI, and then she goes and walks her dog and has a conversation with the AI tool about different approaches. And by the time she's done walking the dog, she knows how she's going to go forward.
Oh.
There's another really intelligent woman that I worked with who told me she's right now completing her doctorate in education, and she told me that the research tools were going to save her 3 years in the completion of this doctoral degree because of the ability to consume large amounts of information, tell her whether her ideas were unique, look at the different terminology that different people used in different fields. So
Wow.
the really smart people out there are figuring stuff out to do here that's just not been possible or not been possible at this speed before.
Yeah. I feel like we're gonna be years, even if it never gets better, we're gonna be years
Mhm.
figuring out what we can do with it just as it exists today.
Yeah, yeah. It's also possible, really, to screw up at you know you can screw up at scale now, as the startup people would say. You if it was hard to make mistakes at this pace, and everything from the deep fakes to the hallucinations is concerning. I mean, I asked AI to tell me about myself, and it told me that I had a bachelor's degree from Harvard University in classics and a master's degree and MBA from Harvard Business School. Neither of which is in the slightest true. That's not what I never went to Harvard for any reason. So I'm like, it just decided since Harvard Business Press published my first book that I must have gone to Harvard Business School. I'm like, oh boy, that's not really great.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, no, I've had similar experiences. Yeah, no,
Yeah.
it's gonna be interesting. Well, I'm glad that we have this data. I mean, it's so exciting to have data about what people really think and what they're really doing and not doing, and yeah, I just think it's wonderful that you did this study. So, thank you for doing it, and thank you for being on here to talk about it with us, today. Where can people find the full results when it's available?
So it will be available on November 5th. Your podcast
Yeah.
is going live
Yeah,
after
yeah.
that, right?
Yeah, this would go live that
Okay.
morning.
So people can go to gothamghostwriters.com/AI-writer, and they can download a free copy of the report. And I'm going to make a unique offer here. um, I just love finding stuff out here. Because with this size of a data set, you can find out. You can People can ask questions and I can actually answer them. So yeah, if you look at what's in the research and you say, well, what about this thing? If people contact me, email me. My blog is at bernoff.com, and you can contact me there. Um, I could actually find the answers. So yeah, just I'm interested in digging more into here and getting more insight out of the same data set that we already collected.
Oh, that's exciting. Thank you.
Mhm.
Okay, well, that's all for AI Side Quest. This will be in the newsletter as well at aisidequest.com, and we will put and I'll put a link to where you can get the survey in the show notes.